Now I would like to invite Senator Berthel to please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Good morning, Senator.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Senator, thank you so much. And before we begin, I would like to make a historic announcement, and that is that Senator Anwar has informed the chair that pursuant to Senate Rule 24, he will be voting from outside the chamber. And so that is the first time we've had to invoke that Senate rule. And with that, Senator Duff.
Thank you, Madam President, and good morning. Good morning to the chamber as well. Madam President, is there any business on the clerk's desk?
Mr. Clerk.
Good morning. The clerk is in possession of Senate Agenda Number 1, dated Monday, March 1st, 2021.
Senator Duff.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I move all items on Senate Agenda Number 1, dated Monday, March 1st, 2021, to be acted upon as indicated, and that the agenda be incorporated by reference into the Senate Journal and Senate transcript.
Hearing no objections, so ordered. Senator Duff.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I ask for suspension of the rules in order to take up the resolution from Senate Agenda Number 1.
Hearing no objections, so ordered. Senator Duff.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I'd like to yield to Senator Berthel.
Senator Berthel, good morning.
Good morning, Madam President. Thank you, Senator Duff. Would the clerk please call the joint resolution on Senate Agenda Number 1?
Mr. Clerk.
Senate Joint Resolution Number 32, resolution expressing sympathy on the death of State Auditor and former State Senator Robert J. Kane.
Senator Berthel.
Madam President, I would ask that the clerk please read the resolution at this time.
Mr. Clerk.
Senate Joint Resolution Number 32, resolution expressing sympathy on the death of State Auditor and former State Senator Robert J. Kane. Resolved by this Assembly, whereas on Friday, February 5th, 2021, the state of Connecticut lost an admired and dedicated auditor of public accounts and former state senator with the passing of Robert J. Kane at the age of 53. And whereas he represented the 32nd Senatorial District with distinction for more than 9 years, from 2008 through 2017. And whereas he served as an auditor of public accounts from 2017 until the time of his passing, and whereas he was born on April 30th, 1967 in Waterbury, Connecticut, son of the late James J. and Dina LaRusso Kane Sr., and whereas he was the proud father of his 2 children, Aiden and Dina Kane, and whereas he was a graduate of Sacred Heart High School in Waterbury, Central Connecticut State University, and the University of New Haven, and whereas he was a successful entrepreneur who opened one of the first cell phone stores in Connecticut, Cartel Cellular Communications, in 1994. And whereas he was the past chairperson of the Watertown Town Council and served as chairperson of its Finance Subcommittee and founding chairperson of its Business Development Subcommittee. And whereas he was first elected to serve the 32nd Senatorial District in a special election on January 15, 2008, representing the towns of Bethlehem, Bridgewater, Middlebury, Oxford, Roxbury, Seymour, Southbury, Washington, Watertown, and Woodbury. And whereas he served four terms as a state senator and served as the ranking member of the Appropriations Committee, Human Services Committee, and the Executive and Legislative Nominations Committee, and also served on the Public Health Committee. And whereas he was the Deputy Minority Leader Pro Temp, Caucus Chairman, and served as Assistant Minority Leader and Minority Whip in the Connecticut State Senate. And whereas he served as chairperson of the Walcott Street Lakewood Road Business Association, president of the Professional Networking Partners of Waterbury, Connecticut, corporator of the Valley United Way, and member of the board of directors of the Waterbury Regional Chamber of Commerce. And whereas he was a former board member of United Way, of the Waterbury ARC, and of the Regional Workforce Investment Board. And whereas he was a recipient of the Waterbury Regional Chamber Malcolm Baldridge Award for Volunteerism, and a recipient of the Waterbury Regional Chamber Harold Webster Smith Small Business Award. And whereas he received the 2016 Radiological Society of Connecticut Award for his leadership in advocating for preventive health care services for women and access to services by all patients. And whereas besides his beloved children, Aiden and Dina, he is survived by his siblings, Maria Kane Slavin and her husband, John Cheryl A. Kane and John Tarasio, James J. Kane Jr., and Diane S. Kane, all of Waterbury, and Christopher M. Kane of Walcott, and several nieces and nephews. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Connecticut General Assembly expresses its sincere sympathy and heartfelt condolences on the passing of one of its honorable former members, Robert J. Kane, whose death is a profound loss to the Office of the Auditors of Public Accounts, the State Senate, his family and friends, the residents of the 10 towns of the 32nd Senatorial District, and the entire state of Connecticut. Be it further resolved that the clerks of the House of Representatives and the Senate cause a copy of this resolution to be sent to the family of Robert J. Kane as an expression of the high esteem and affection in which he is held.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Will you remark further, Senator Berthel?
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Mr. Clerk, for reading the resolution. Before I begin my remarks, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of the former Minority Leader, Senator Fasano, in the chamber with us this morning. Thank you, Senator, for being here. Senator Kane's family could not be here with us today. His children, Aiden and Dina, who were frequent visitors to the circle, this chamber, and this seat, were not yet ready to come back here. But they are listening and watching us this morning. I would ask that we keep them in our thoughts and prayers. I met Rob Kane for the first time when I decided to run for the Watertown Board of Education a decade ago. I had, of course, known of him as our former town council chair in Watertown and as my then state senator. As many of you know who worked with him, he had a passion for politics and for winning that was enviable. And at that first meeting, he pledged his support to me. He knocked doors with me all over Watertown. He had introduced me to hundreds of people, and for the first time, of many times, introduced me to one of his favorite sayings, more like a philosophy, which was ABC, which was always be closing, a famous line from the 1992 movie Glengarry Glen Ross. For Rob and for campaigns, ABC actually meant to say hello, to introduce yourself, to explain your platform, and to ask for the vote. Rob was known to say many times that his favorite season was campaign season. And in every election since then, with any candidate with whom he interacted, the ABC strategy was deployed, and it was obligatory in that first campaign meeting to watch the clip from the movie where ABC is referenced. Rob was fond of the many friendships that came from his love of politics as well. In 2014, Rob was an integral part of my campaign for the 68th district seat in the State House. He assured me it would be a tough race with an open seat up for grabs. And for nearly 6 months, right up until Election Day, he never allowed me to become complacent or confident about winning, or to relax, or to take my foot off the gas, pushing me the entire time. That was his mindset when it came to politics. And around 7:15 p.m. that evening on election night, he sent me a text that I still have on my phone to this day that said, simply read, quote unquote, "I think you got this, buddy." And I won that election, and that began the time that Rob and I would begin working together here in the legislature. On opening day in January 2015, in a sophomoric kind of way, with a grin on his face right outside these doors. Rob pointed out to me that my district number, 68, plus his district number, 32, equaled a perfect 100, and that the people knew this. They absolutely knew this, and so we truly had to do a great job together. Perhaps a bit silly, but that was just one example of the ways that he would seek to inspire me and many, many others along the way to make us think a little bit about silly things that perhaps actually had some relevance. And upon my arrival here in this historic place, Rob took me under his wing, he showed me around, he introduced me to staff and influencers in the building. He shared with me who to look out for and, well, quite honestly, who to watch out for. He also taught me the real value and importance of relationships. He reminded me always to stand your ground, to be honest, be firm, be respectful, and that your word is your bond, and how those relationships afforded him many opportunities to get things done here. Rob never ceased to amaze me with how many people on both sides of the aisle, in all branches of the government, respected him as a leader in this building, despite their differences in politics, despite whether or not they agreed or disagreed with him. And I think this spoke volumes to his character. Unlike many of my colleagues in this circle, Rob and I never worked together in this chamber because, of course, I succeeded him in the 32nd Senate seat. In late 2016, when Rob confidentially told me about the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for him to possibly move into the storied role of state auditor, he asked me if I was ready to climb the stairs, to join the circle, to work in the upper chamber. And I told him I wasn't sure, to be perfectly honest, at that first meeting. But he once again pledged his support to help me get elected, reminded me about his ABC philosophy, made me watch the clip again, and having himself won a special election to this seat in 2008, assured me that a special election would be the hardest one yet. We were very fortunate that we had built a great group of friends, allies, and supporters, and we worked together to accomplish the goal. On the evening of that February day, actually 4 years ago yesterday, after a hard-fought special election, after the votes were counted and we had secured a victory, Rob pulled me aside and congratulated me and said, "Listen, Senator-elect, you worked hard and have a great deal to be proud of. You've earned your win, but now the hard work really begins." And in a way that was typical of Rob, of his wittiness, he said to me, "You are now my protege, so don't mess it up." And Rob never stopped believing in me and always stood by my side. As Rob transitioned into his new role as state auditor, a role in which he took tremendous pride, he became an even more important and valuable mentor to me and others. In normal times, before the pandemic, any day that I was in the Legislative Office Building or the Capitol, I would begin with a stop in his office. He would share a corny joke, ask me about a piece of legislation, or, more important to him, if I had read the latest report from the auditors. Or sometimes we would just talk about being dads and about our kids. Rob was always available to me by text, by phone, or even in person back in Watertown as he lived one street over from me. He would regularly offer unsolicited advice, for better or worse, on any issue. And assuredly, I have already felt the painful loss of my go-to guy since his passing and the loss of my good friend. And I know that many of my colleagues here in the circle and downstairs in the hall of the House share that same sense of loss. Rob was a statesman, a mentor, a friend. He was a son, a brother, and a dad. I will assuredly miss his regular jokes about politics, his wittiness, and his great advice. And my debt of gratitude to him is large and mostly unpaid. Rob exemplified public service and what it meant to be the voice of the people. And we, the people, are forever grateful for his commitment, his caring, his sacrifices, and for standing up for what he truly believed was right. His love of family, his brothers, his sisters, and especially his children, Aiden and Dina, was enviable and always a priority over everything else. Rob constantly reminded us all that family came before everything else. Thank you, Rob Kane, for your service to the people of the 32nd District and the state of Connecticut. We are all better for having known you. You left your mark on this place, and that is a good thing. May you rest in peace in the loving arms of God. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Berthel. Will you remark further on the resolution that is before the chamber? Good afternoon, Senator Minor.
Good afternoon, Madam President. I rise in support of the resolution and, like my good friend from Watertown, wanted to just share a few thoughts about Rob Kane. I'm not sure when we first met. I can say that I know I served with him in the Appropriations Committee, and one of the things that I enjoyed most about serving with him was you never really knew what he was going to ask. So not only did the chairman of the committee not know what he was going to ask, we didn't know what he was going to ask. And more often than not, you didn't know where he was going with this question. But it was always a fun trip. And usually at the root of it, the taxpayer was the one that he was watching out for. It may not have been clear at the beginning, but usually by the end, through his wit and his tenacity, he would drill down on a question until he got the answer that he wanted. I'm pretty sure it's probably a good thing he wasn't an attorney. Rob and I always shared what I would call friendly conversation about family. It's one of the things that I enjoyed most about him, because while you may not have thought that he knew much about you, he always knew what your kids had been up to, or always knew what they were interested in. And it may have been because someone else had shared the conversation at one point in time. But he made you honestly separate from whatever it was that you were thinking about that may have been grating on you for a period of the day, and brought you back to a place of comfort. Even when he left this chamber and became the auditor, I would see him in the cafeteria, and there was always a conversation about kids and friends and restaurants. Some politics, but mostly he would kind of bring you to a different place that was more human, more like our constituents, less involved in the process. And frankly, I found that as a respite. For me, it was good. Times when I'd be on the Labor Committee and you would really be tangling over some issues, he would take you to a place where you were perfectly at ease. He enjoyed hockey. I enjoyed hockey. And one day he walked into my office with a hockey tie. I don't know if he bought it thinking it was a golf tie and then realized that golf balls aren't black, but nonetheless, I got a tie. And every day I wear this tie, I think about Rob Kane, and I always have. He had a certain genuineness to him. Having done business with him, I got a remote car starter from my wife, and it worked flawlessly. But my point is that he really did represent the average Connecticut citizen. He was just your neighbor, and he kind of approached things that way. We enjoyed watching Quinnipiac hockey together, usually separated by about 200 or 300 feet, but no matter where he was in the arena, he would spot you, and before too long, you'd either get a text message or a visit. And it was just something very, very refreshing about Rob. He spoke passionately about Aiden and Dina. As I said in the onset, there was no doubt about his love for his children, his love for his family. It was second to none. And there isn't really a time when I think about Rob at this point, when I don't think about them and how devastating it must be in life and how much they're going to require the support and friendship of all of us. and of all of those that have known that family. So I'm pleased to be here today to say a few words about Rob. And as devastated as we all were about the news, as devastated as we all have been about similar news, usually reserved for people older than we are, it is a day to be able to reflect on his life, his friendship, his love of the process, and his love of his family. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Minor. Will you remark further? Senator Duff.
Thank you, Madam President. I also rise in support of the resolution and was really shocked to hear of the news of Rob Kane's passing. He came up in a special election like I did, to the Senate like I did to the House, and certainly knew what it was like to kind of come in the middle of things happening. But that didn't stop Rob from jumping right in both feet and working on the best interests of his constituents. Rob was somebody who immediately could make lots of friends. And one of the things I remember about Rob most of all is that while we probably didn't agree on very much, I don't know that he ever made anything personal. And he was one who you could argue with politically, from a policy perspective, and we argued when I was on the Appropriations Committee quite a bit. But at the end, he was one where you could stand up, shake hands, pat each other on the back, and move on, and talk about your kids the very next minute. He was somebody I know who loved his kids very, very much, and was very proud of them and watching them grow. I know that Rob took this job seriously, but I don't know that he ever took himself too seriously, because he was always somebody who had a quick wit, could tell a joke or tell a good story, even in the middle of debating something that he thought was very, very important. I had forgotten actually that he was a hockey fan, and I think that was something that he and I probably talked about over time, with his kids playing, and myself playing hockey in the past also, and some of the rinks that we knew, and getting up early in the morning, or how much money you have to spend to play in that sport. But again, he was always somebody who really valued and cherished his family, and valued and cherished his children so much that he would always be willing to talk about whatever they were up to. And so, Madam President, it was just really devastating to hear the news. When Rob Kane went to became the auditor, we shared a funny story because, most of us have other jobs outside the Capitol, and myself as a realtor who's an independent contractor, he owned his own business. And, even as legislators, these aren't 9-to-5 jobs. And so when he became the auditor and had a 9-to-5 job, he had it was a reckoning, I think, for him to say, wait a minute, I have to be in one place for 8 hours from 9 to 5, when, for all of us who were in the political world especially, we're used to being in 10 different places over the course of 10 hours, and never being in one place at one time or for that long a time. And so I knew so we joked about that, but I know that over that transition from politics to auditor, how much he really took seriously that position, and how much he grew to love being the auditor, and actually how much he would actually be in touch with many of us on various issues that came up, always in a very respectful way and collegial way as well. So Madam President, I just want to extend my sympathies to his family, especially his children, to Senator Berthel, who succeeded Senator Kane, and to his constituents in his district, and to again say it was such a shocking loss to lose somebody so young, and we'll remember his contributions here in the circle. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Duff. Will you remark further on the resolution? Senator Looney, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Madam President. On this sad occasion, just wanted to speak briefly on the resolution. Senator Rob Kane was someone who you always knew cherished and relished his service here. He was someone who came at the job with great enthusiasm, had a real sense that he was representing his district. He always came at. He was in many ways sort of the embodiment of the happy warrior. He loved political combat, loved political debate, but he always did it in a way that that was a sense of celebration of the political process. And as previous speakers have said, he would at the same time ask about one's family or have a joke or discuss something about sports. He always had that high-spirited way about him, but you always knew that he never took for granted the fact that he had a special obligation conferred upon him by the people of his district. And I think that's something that all who do a good job here of whichever side, whichever party, all share. Then when he became the state auditor, I think he did a superb job working closely and collaboratively and in a bipartisan way with John Garagosian for the last 4 years in that position, carefully looking into things, applying his business background, being highly conscientious in looking for practices or waste that the auditor's office could identify and point to better ways of doing things. So it is a terrible loss for someone as young as he was and as vital as he was to be taken at such an early age. As others have said, he always, you could tell how devoted he was to his children, how his thoughts of them permeated everything that he did every day, and the pride and joy that he took in being a parent was just a wonderful sense of what he was as a human being. So again, Madam President, this resolution conveys to his family our joining with them in their sense of loss. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Looney. Will you remark further on the resolution that is before us? Good afternoon, Senator Kelly.
Good afternoon, Madam President, and thank you. I would also like to start by thanking first Senator Looney for the courtesy of the yield to end this conversation, and also like to recognize our former leader, Senator Len Fasano, who is also with us today in the circle. If ever there was an example of the phrase, "But for the grace of God go I," this is it. Rob Kane was here one moment, gone the next. We had the fortune to share the town of Seymour. And the first time I met him was at a very big family event. The kids would always love to go to the Seymour Pumpkin Festival. And in that first election in 2010, I had the opportunity to meet then Senator Kane. And he showed me around and let me visit with a lot of the local folks in Seymour. And I got to find that he was a person of just great insight and knowledge, and he was very personable. And from there, it just grew. He would constantly talk, constantly have comments, always quick-witted. And always, if there was one issue that he always harangued, and I know I'm not the only one, there are many people here today, I'm sure, would remember conversations about the Oxford Airport. He wouldn't give up on that until it happened. But that's the type of person he was. I can remember one evening where it was a CRRA bill, and we wanted to get out there and talk about the bill, and I ran an amendment on the Garbage Museum in Stratford. And I can still see Rob standing there as he was grilling me on the amendment and questioning me with a huge smile ear to ear. But that was Rob. Rob knew how to live life, and he did to the fullest. But he also did so much for his district. He did so much for so many in his district, in his community, for the valley. Rob was always there, just like he was always for his family. Like me, he was a hockey dad. Anytime he was in Shelton, he called. And conversely, when I was in Watertown, I returned the favor. And right up until the end, he kept calling and talking. No one had a better sense of humor, perspective, or insight. You always knew when Rob Kane walked into the caucus room or the circle. His presence was always known, and in a good way. Rob Kane, you will be missed, my friend. In closing, may the road rise up to meet you. May the wind be at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face and rains fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand.
Thank you, Senator. If there are no further remarks, I'd like to ask that the chamber please observe a moment of silence in honor of Rob Kane's passing. Resolution is adopted. Senator Duff.